2022 proved to be one heck of a year here in Abilene and the Big Country. There were moments filled with smiles and cries that will be felt for generations to come. For the next hour, we'll bring you what made 2022 the year it was in our area of West Texas. The 2022 KRBC Year in Review Show starts now.
Welcome to this special presentation of the 2022 Year in Review on KRBC, presented by Jackson Brothers Feed and Seed.
Hello and welcome into the KRBC studio. I'm Abby Green. We begin our look back at 2022 with the top economic stories from around Abilene and throughout the Big Country. At number 5, Great Lakes Cheese is opening a new plant, hiring for 200+ jobs. Back in May of 2021, the cheese factory broke ground in Abilene. But this past September, it was announced by Mayor Anthony Williams the factory's plan to hire 210 positions to get their initial operation underway with an average salary across all jobs of $60,000. Mayor Williams added that Great Lakes Cheese Factory would be one of the largest economic projects in Abilene history, with an estimated economic impact of $3.48 billion. Number 4, Bridgestone Bandag announced in September the plan to invest more than $60 million into an expansion project to create more high-paying jobs. Once complete, the expansion will allow Bridgestone Bandag to retain 179 jobs with an average salary of over $53,000. Number 3, it's referenced as the unique opportunity that comes once in a kabillion years. In December of 2021, the city of Abilene and Taylor County announced a $2.4 billion 20-year-long partnership with the Houston-based company Lancium that promises to bring 57 new jobs to Abilene. Lancium broke ground this summer to build the infrastructure needed to support the many computers and servers to mine cryptocurrency, as well as provide a substation needed to power them. Number 2, Abilene's new downtown hotel. Construction on the DoubleTree by Hilton continues and is right on schedule with its estimated completion date in the spring of 2023. According to the Abilene Convention and Visitors Bureau, they're booking conventions as far out as 2026. Now to our top economic story of the year. We've all seen pictures of the Mars rover, a self-driving vehicle cruising over the Red Rocks, gathering pictures for us to see. There's a similar rover much closer to home, though, driving through the dusty pastures in Haskell County. Tyler Henderson drove the back roads to find out all about it.
It's not too often you'd see a self-driving rover maneuvering the pastures in Haskell County, feeding livestock along its journey.
I was feeding one day and I said, well, there's got to be a way. There's got to be a better way to do this.
That's the Ranch Rover, the product of a problem-solving 25-year-old cattle rancher, River McTasney, manually feeding their livestock about 3 hours every day.
That's 15 hours we could spend doing other things, more high-value type work, whether it's running equipment, clearing fence line, or fixing fence, or working on equipment. And
now 27, McTasney's Ranch Rover has been a dream 2 years in the making, building it and welding it on his own, even teaching himself to code to make it autonomous. In an industry where time is money, River says they spend about 500 hours a year just feeding. Tack onto that 15 hours a year just opening gates. Using the skills he learned here on his family's ranch, he created the Ranch Rover, creating not only an efficient way to do the job, but also bridging that gap between agriculture and technology.
I hope this kind of serves as inspiration and for anybody else out there to go ahead and hop on the train, because this is our time too.
In Haskell, Tyler Henderson, KRBC, Abilene's local news.
Coming up after the break, we break down the top political stories surrounding Abilene and the Big Country, especially one that created waves throughout West Texas.
You're watching the 2022 Year in Review on KRBC, presented by Jackson Brothers Feed and Seed.
Welcome back to the 2022 Year in Review, presented by Jackson Brothers Feed and Seed. From economics to politics, Abilene and the Big Country gave us plenty of headlines in 2022. Let's check out the top 5 political stories, beginning with number 5. The city of Abilene and Taylor County will have new leaders heading into 2023. Phil Crowley outlasted Scott Leibowitz for Taylor County judge in the March Republican primary. With no other challengers in the November election, Crowley moved on to succeed Judge Downing Bowles, who was elected in 2010. Meanwhile, the city of Abilene will have a new mayor, with Anthony Williams announcing in November that he would not be seeking a third term in 2023 and that it's time to pass the baton to spend time with his family. Williams was elected mayor in 2017. Number 4, former presidential and Texas gubernatorial candidate Beto O'Rourke made an appearance in Snyder back in July. Although supporters were in attendance, he was met by opposition that told O'Rourke he wasn't welcome there and to move on down the road. O'Rourke went on to invite the counter rally into the Scurry County Library, where he was speaking to let their voices be heard. O'Rourke would fall in the November election to Governor Greg Abbott. Number 3, the B-21 bomber unveiled Dyess Air Force Base to be one of the first bases to house the aircraft. The announcement came in early December with Gary Bridwell, vice president of the Abilene Military Affairs Committee, saying the 6th-generation bomber is a big economic boost for the Abilene community, bringing a lot of construction and a lot of people, keeping our nation safe from right here in Abilene. Number 2, Texas Governor Greg Abbott made his way to the Big Country back in May to commend first responders for their dedication during the Mesquite Heat fire. But on the very same day, he would also address one of the worst tragedies to hit the state of Texas.
When parents drop their kids off at school, they have every expectation to know that they're going to be able to pick their child up when that school day ends. And there are families who are in mourning right now, and the state of Texas is in mourning with them.
Now to our top political story of 2022. It involved one of the nation's most controversial topics, abortion, and if Abilene should become a sanctuary city for the unborn. Abilene residents voted yes to become a sanctuary city in November. But before the election, Tyler Henderson unpacked the 18-page proposed ordinance.
For the first time in Abilene history, an ordinance written by citizens has found its way onto the November election ballot.
Well, the goal is to outlaw abortion in our city, make sure never, ever will an abortion happen in this city.
Scott Beard presented the Sanctuary City ordinance before council in April, with council opting to send it to the November election ballot.
The life of the mother is protected. That is the exception. If her life is in danger, then there is that exception to take the baby.
However, compared to Lubbock's successful 8-page abortion ordinance, Abilene's proposed ordinance is 10 pages longer, with further consequences not seen in Lubbock's.
Those that aid and abet are those abortion doctors that perform those abortions. There is a public and private enforcement mechanism in place to ensure that that baby's protected.
Abilene lawyer Kristen Postel says the Texas Heartbeat Act already allows civil lawsuits against aiding or abetting an abortion, but says this new ordinance reads more for personal gain.
It's trying to give a private cause of action so that somebody can sue someone and get money if somebody helps with an abortion.
That's written in Section 20, Article 91 of the proposed Abilene ordinance. She notes in the same section there's no statute of limitations with this ordinance either.
Like murder and sexual assault. Those types of things may not have statutes of limitations. But the way this is written, there's nothing that prevents somebody to say, hey, somebody had an abortion in the 80s and I want to sue them.
In Section 20, Article 89 of the ordinance, the City of Abilene would also be responsible for punishing parties involved in administering or assisting in an abortion, even across state lines.
If anything, it is saying we want you to think twice before you decide to go have an abortion done.
City Councilman Lynn Beard believes the city doesn't have the legal authority to do so, and he gave this example.
A police officer from Abilene drives to New Mexico and starts trying to enforce the municipal ordinances of Clovis, New Mexico. They don't have the legal authority to do that.
Councilman Beard, a vocal pro-life advocate, says many of the elements seen in the proposed ordinance he's against, but specifically Section 20, Article 88, saying the City of Abilene must prohibit employee-provided health insurance covering abortions.
TRICARE with the military and the national chains that are in Abilene. Well, a lot of those health insurance policies aren't written here. They're written in, a lot of times, in another state. And the local entity has no control over what is in that policy and what's not in that policy.
Subjecting employees to thousands of dollars in fines, reports to Taylor County district attorneys, but also every district attorney with jurisdiction over that specific employer.
People need to really understand what they are saying. We want to be the law of the land in Abilene, Texas, if they vote yes for this. And they need to understand there are some dramatic differences between this and the Lubbock Ordinance.
While Scott Beard has one concern at the forefront of his mind.
But we are wanting to make sure that these babies have somebody that's a voice for them.
In Abilene, Tyler Henderson, KRBC, Abilene's local news.
Coming up, an Abilene church celebrates 137 years of existence. More from the north side after the break.
You're watching the 2022 Year in Review on KRBC, presented by Jackson Brothers Feed and Seed.
It was in 1881 that the city of Abilene was established. 4 years later, Mount Zion First Baptist Church, the city's first African-American church, was organized. This year, the church celebrates 137 years, and as Manny Diaz tells us, it was built for much more than a place of worship and a church that continues to thrive on Abilene's north side.
You can say there's just something about Mount Zion First Baptist Church.
Well, it's a beacon. Hopefully it's a place where you can come and feel at home, feel comfortable.
Treated like family here.
For Nancy Cruz, an 18-year member of the church, it's the family feeling, plus
Hallelujah is the highest praise.
a choir that does not disappoint.
When my mother was alive, she would come with me sometimes, and she loved the choir. She said they were very uninhibited and they sang with their heart and soul.
Along with the message, the vibe, and the choir, there's one more thing.
Now, Father, we thank you for this church. 137 years.
This year, Mount Zion First Baptist Church, Abilene's oldest African-American church, celebrates 137 years of existence. In fact, when it was organized in 1885 by Reverend James Curry of Sherman, Texas, it came 4 years after the founding of the city of Abilene.
There were very few black people living in the area at that time. However, they were dedicated Christian people.
And as Reverend Andrew Penns, pastor of Valley View Missionary Baptist Church and local historian at the Curtis House Cultural Center explains, Mount Zion came when African Americans needed it the most.
Segregation was very prevalent. And the blacks did not have access to adequate churches, did not have access to lots of things that were available to other races of people during that era.
Amazing grace. The Mount Zion congregation first called a small house home near the railroad tracks near South 4th and Cherry Street. In 1940, the congregation built a new church in the 800 block of Ash Street. The building would burn down in 1968, with the church relocating to its present location on Stafford. Meanwhile, Lady Jen, Mount Zion's First Lady, describes the other element of the church and why it should not be forgotten.
Knowing that it was the first African-American school for African-American children, that's a history that our children and our children's children needs to know. So therefore, I find it it's a very unique place to worship at.
Speaking of worship,
I want to let you know, God will sometimes put you in the storm because He wants to see what you look like smiling while you're in it.
it's the word from one pastor to the next that continues to breathe life into the Mount Zion congregation. And if Reverend DeMattis Sherman Jr. can help it, it's the word of God that can perhaps inspire a future pastor.
You have great pastors that have pastored here. We talked about Albert Chu, I.S. Moreland from 68 to 86, the longest tenured pastor in the history of Mount Zion First Baptist. And so I'm just glad to be in that number. And hopefully one day someone will glean from the ministry past the ministry footsteps that we left here.
As real as Mount Zion keeps it with the congregation.
In Mount Zion First Baptist this morning with your church clothes on and lifting your hands to God and got your good wig on.
The message does indeed come down to one thing.
The Bible says the just shall live by faith. And that's all that we have. There's no magic formula. We have to walk by faith.
From Mount Zion First Baptist Church.
Stop doubting God's favor over your life just because unforeseen circumstances have weighed you down.
I'm Manny Diaz, KRBC, Abilene's local news.
Keeping the theme of positive vibes, we take a look at the top 5 positive stories of 2022 and how the big country rallied in times of need when we come back. Welcome back to the 2022 Year in Review on KRBC, presented by Jackson Brothers Feed and Seed. Moving forward, we turn our attention to the top 5 positive stories of the year. At number 5, she's the tap dancing 102-year-old woman. Ruth Fowler celebrated her 102nd birthday with family and friends at the Lindale Abilene Senior Living Center back in November. Outside of arriving in Abilene prior to Dyess Air Force Base being established, Miss Fowler holds the distinction of being Abilene's first woman to work as an accountant. Number 4, an Abilene family doubled the fun in their home by adopting 3 siblings from foster care while already having 3 children of their own. 10-year-old Xavier, 9-year-old Marie, and 8-year-old Christian joined the family back in January. Father of the family, Jake Mills, said they've never been in a home that is healthy, has good boundaries and good rules, and where forgiveness is a part of what we do. Number 3, a Coleman teen saved his father's life following his dad suffering a massive heart attack. 14-year-old David Litton was able to take direction from the Coleman County Sheriff's Office to perform CPR on his father until paramedics arrived. Laney Fulbright, dispatch supervisor, said the fact that a 14-year-old was able to do life-saving measures on his dad until additional help arrived is absolutely amazing. Number 2, Jacob Thompson has been a bus driver with Abilene ISD since October of 2021. Back in February, he was called a hero after he intervened in an incident between a middle school age girl and a 45-year-old man. Thompson was driving his middle school route around 7 a.m. when he noticed a young girl walking down Butternut Street near South 16th. He noticed a man following close behind her. He made the decision to turn around and see what was going on. Thompson said the suspect, 45-year-old Sheldon Bramblett, fled at the side of the bus, and Thompson parked the bus to make sure the girl was okay. Now to our top story, the tragic story of C.J. Rendon, the Snyder third grader who passed away in a car accident on the 4th of July. KRBC's Tyler Henderson shows us how the impact of the youngster's passing reached all the way to Midland.
As you can see behind me, this is a story our Noah McKinney brought to us, hearing the heartbreaking memories of friends and family of C.J. Rendon. I was able to speak to Monica Villarreal this morning, a former Snyder resident who now resides in Midland, and took fundraising matters into her own hands after hearing the news of Rendon's passing at a family member's funeral. And it was through tears Villarreal said she understands the pain brought on by the loss of a child after her 14-year-old son passed away in a boating accident the same day 2 years ago.
And watching my kids grieve was horrible, and I just feel really, really bad for that family, and I know what they're going to go through. And so I want to be able to ease some of that burden, because the light company doesn't care that you lost your kid. The light company, the electric can still get shut off, and that shouldn't be something that she has to worry about.
As you can see, here are some pictures of her son Maze, who she described as the sweetest, most tender-hearted and respectful kid she knew. But it was during her mourning that Villarreal began baking cakes in order to keep her mind off of her son's loss. She's now selling her custom cakes to raise funds for the Rendon family. But after one Facebook post, she caught the attention of several Snyder businesses who were donating gift cards, cash, and other items to be sold for the Rendon family. So far, Villarreal has raised just over $3,500, and she says she plans on meeting with the Rendon family not only to give them the fundraising money that she's raised, but also give them another shoulder to cry on if they need it. Reporting live from the newsroom, Tyler Henderson, KRBC, Abilene's local news.
Coming up, the Texas high school football season was one to remember. Raven Ray brings us the top 10 plays from the Friday Night Lights.
You're watching the 2022 Year in Review on KRBC, presented by Jackson Brothers Feed and Seed.
What a season it was for a number of big country teams in 2022. Just recently, we saw Westbrook, Lorain, Albany, and HAWLEY all play for football state titles, with the Wildcats, Lions, and Bearcats winning it all. With all that said, we bring you the top 10 plays from 2022, counted down by Raven Ray.
This is BigCountryHomepage.com Sports with Raven Ray. The Big Country crowned 3 state champions in 2022, so it was obvious that it was an exciting season. Here are the top 10 plays from the Big Country's 16 weeks of Texas high school football. We come in at number 10. We have the CLYDE and SWEETWATer. Bulldogs going for 2 to win it in overtime, and it's good. CLYDE wins it 29-28, finishes their season 4-6. Now to 9, Abilene High versus Lubbock Coronado. Freshman Braden Henry at quarterback. He breaks 3 tackles at the line of scrimmage, and he is gone. Abilene High won 35-14 and made it to the 3rd round of the playoffs. Number 8, HAWLEY versus Panhandle in the 2nd round. HAWLEY going for 2, reverse to Chandler Myers. He hurdles the defender, and Bearcats win it 72-26. Now to 7, Brownwood versus Canyon. iCall breaks loose through the Eagles defense and extends at the goal line. He's going to break loose right there, extends it through, and the ball rolls out of bounds, but after some deliberation by the ref, they're going to call it a touchdown. Brownwood won 31-10 and fell in the 3rd round. Let's see it one more time in slow motion. Moving on to 6, Albany versus New Home in the state semifinal. Handoff to Adam Hill, and watch 5 hurdle the new home kid. Lions punch their ticket with a 53-25 victory. Number 5, Cooper versus San Angelo Central. Chris Warren steps up to the pocket. He gets Johnson all alone. He makes the catch, and that's the game winner for the Cougars of 41-38. Cooper made it to the 2nd round of the playoffs. Now to number 4, WYLIE versus WF Ryder. KJ Long finds Braden Regala, and a 2-point conversion is good. WYLIE wins it after trailing 14-3 to go into the game with a final score of 39-38. Now to 3, Merkel versus Comanche. Joey ZINK scrambling for quite some time, gets through 2 Indians and launches it into the end zone. Elijah Olivares with the catch. Badgers fall 49-14, but ZINK, pulling Johnny Manziel, moves out of his back pocket. Now to number 2, WYLIE versus Colleyville Heritage. KJ Long airs it out to Harrison Heighton for the game winner, and they get the job done. The Bulldogs move on by beating Colleyville Heritage 50-40. WYLIE fell in the 4th round later on. And at number 1, HAWLEY versus CISCO. 10 seconds left in the game. HAWLEY down by 3. Rody Hooper finds Will Scott open for the game winner. 33-30. HAWLEY wins the district championship, and that propelled them to the program's first ever state championship with a win over Refugio, 54-28. A shout out to all the teams and their accomplishments this season. Albany with their first title in 61 years, their first with Denny Faith, and Westbrook with back-to-back titles with the win over Abbott, 69-24, and Lorain making history with their first ever state appearance. I'm so sad it's already over, but what a fun time it was. That's your top 10. Back to you, Abby.
Coming up, one of Abilene's most tradition-rich Mexican food restaurants was demolished this year. We revisit the story of El Phoenix Cafe when we return.
You're watching the 2022 Year in Review on KRBC, presented by Jackson Brothers Feed and Seed.
This Abilene Legacy restaurant has been opened, closed, and opened again many times over the past few decades. Now part of it is gone forever. If you happen to drive by Treadway back in September, you likely witnessed the demolition of the original location of the El Phoenix Mexican restaurant. Now KRBC's Noah McKinney brings us the story of how it came to be.
I mean, I can see people coming through. In here, I can see the kitchen. I can see my mom cooking right here where the stove was at and everything else. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's pretty sentimental.
Few things are more precious than memory. For the children of Maria and Domingo Garcia, this building holds many, those of their family business and of their childhood home.
Such great memories here.
It's a part of me. It's a part of me because I was born here.
Sorry. It's a little tough.
Condemned by the city, the original site of Abilene's El Phoenix Mexican restaurant now lies in ruin. But in 1937, you'd find a line out into the street just to get in.
My dad used to go sell tortillas, load them up in a station wagon, and go to Anson, all these little towns around here.
Joe's Tortilla Factory quickly found success. As time went on, more recipes were added and El Phoenix was born. And the neighborhood couldn't get enough of Garcia's authentic Mexican cuisine.
After church, everybody would come over here.
The Garcia family home became a gathering place for El Barrio Zancudo.
It was like a town within a town.
A historically Hispanic and black part of Abilene, and even during segregation, all were welcome.
Even though he wasn't allowed to, he would bring them back to our dining room and still serve them with pleasure.
A quality of humanity that customers found in Maria Sr. as well.
I was 1 year old when my dad passed away. Mom was left with pretty much the whole load.
Though she spoke no English, Maria made herself a service to the community.
She was able to say hello, how are you, and they knew who she was.
People didn't have food. She would give them food.
After her retirement, the kids took over. This led to the opening of a second location and the eventual closing of El Phoenix 1. And while the recipes live on, the community, much like the building, has crumbled.
I just want to thank that community for giving all the business that they had here when they was here.
If it wasn't for you, El Phoenix wouldn't have happened.
For BigCountryHomepage.com, I'm Noah McKinney.
A big part of our Sunday night shows during the NFL season this year has been our segment called Hidden Gems, highlighting local businesses. With that said, let's count down the top 5 Hidden Gems segments of the year. Number 5, Bear's Bake Shop, first opened nearly 35 years ago in Plano, but the owners moved to Abilene to retire. The Rogers family would eventually open their bakery in Abilene. When their son, Mark Rogers, one of Abilene's most well-known and respected people, died in a car wreck last year, Melissa and Urban Rogers went back to family business to help grieve. The couple used the passing of their son as motivation to do their best in everything they do. Number 4, the Cattle Drive Cafe and Bull Bar in Coleman has been a major part of bringing more people to downtown while preserving the history of the building and the city. Todd and Vicki Verdon opened this cafe 2 years ago. They were living in Abilene, but they moved to Vicki's hometown when they heard Coleman was renovating downtown. These business owners allow locals to play a part in building this restaurant by letting local ranchers brand their wall and even letting the customers name the bull statue inside. Number 3, a Nepal native immigrated to the big country saying burgers are his American dream. Kamara Watt, owner of Texas Flaming Grill on Ambler Avenue in North Abilene, said he spent close to 15 years in the restaurant industry before finally investing in himself in 2019. Favorites at the Northside restaurant include the Flame Burger, Philly cheesesteak, and fresh salad. Number 2. 4 Abilene men are working to revamp the vacant Elliott Hamill Funeral Home on Hickory Street into what's called Peacock Plaza. One building a workspace for anyone to rent, while the other building a sports bar with an open patio and water fountain. Number 1, when you donate items to Goodwill, the majority of those items are sold to the community at a discounted price. But what happens to the items that are given to Goodwill that can't be sold? Our Annabelle Tuggle went to Goodwill's salvaging area where she learned how even the items not sold are given to a good cause.
When the pandemic first hit, many Americans lost their jobs. Among those people was this man, Jeff Hinchcliffe.
It was like a year and a half without a job.
But over a year ago, Goodwill offered him employment, which still wasn't the end of his troubles.
I also got evicted.
During this eviction, Hinchcliffe lost his cat, who was his best friend.
I'd had him for 8.5 years.
Hinchcliffe still works for Goodwill, but he works in a part of Goodwill most people never see. The salvaging area.
When the community donates items, their goods to us, it gets sorted out. We have 2 sections at GSU, and then we have our side, the salvage side.
The items that make it back here to the salvaging area are either items that are stained or worn, or they're items like this one, which were placed in the store but not sold for 4 to 5 weeks.
Throw them in here and compact them.
And they turn into this.
This is a clothing bale, so we'll have a reseller come in and usually buy 48 of these bales, and they purchase them and they take them to, say, Canada or Mexico, and then they resell them over there.
Salvage manager Ray Castillo says this is one way to still keep the non-sellable items out of the landfills. And the number that's on these clothing bales, this is how much they weigh in pounds.
Last year, Goodwill West Texas salvaged 3.5 million pounds of donated goods.
Communications director of Goodwill, Caitlin Paunessa, says this job helps recycle these products and it helps the employees.
You can feel good whenever you donate to Goodwill, knowing that you are going to extend the lives of your items that you no longer need, and that those items are going to fund mission programs that are going to help people.
Like Hinchcliffe, who, by the way, finally got a new best friend.
What's his name?
Grebo.
In Abilene, Annabelle Tuggle, KRBC, Abilene's local news.
Coming up, we introduce you to one of the scariest places in the big country, especially one where you can actually book an overnight stay. You're watching The Year in Review, presented by Jackson Brothers Feed and Seed.
You're watching the 2022 Year in Review on KRBC, presented by Jackson Brothers Feed and Seed.
Ballinger's Old Park Hotel is not only one of the oldest buildings in West Texas, but arguably one of the most haunted. In a piece produced and directed by Manny Diaz, the owners of this historic hotel describe the history and the frightening paranormal activity that goes on at the Old Park Hotel.
Hi, my name is Connie LaFave. I am one of the co-owners of the Old Park Hotel, and we are in Ballinger, Texas, circa 1886. We believe this building was put here in between 1886 and 1900. We don't have exact records because in 1905 all the records were destroyed due to the floods. So we believe this building's been here at least since, well, before 1900. So that's why we say circa 1886, because we're not exactly sure. But it was a meeting house, it was a courthouse briefly, it was a schoolhouse, it's been a brothel twice, it's been a hotel many, many times, the Seacrest Hotel, the Three Sisters Hotel, the Royale Hotel, and the Park Hotel, and then later the Old Park Hotel. It's been an antique store, a music store. Many, many owners have crossed this space and used it for many different things. A lot of outlaws in the area are known to have visited or come through this location.
The back area behind me is one of the scariest parts of the building. Lots of paranormal activity happens around the whole building, but this particular area behind, a lot of experiences that have occurred to me and numerous people back there.
You can see a haze forming back there most days at this time of night. And I believe it's a portal. I believe it's a portal for spirits to come through and to travel through, and they're stuck here if they don't make their spot.
And the craziest paranormal experiences that happen to people in this chair. They just got tossed. I had a girl about 20 get thrown on the floor right here. All her breath got knocked out. She was laying on the floor. It's just the craziest stuff. You don't know what's going to happen. But a lot of apparitions are sighted back there. We've seen children. I've heard footsteps. I've heard voices. I've had people touched. I've been touched. I've seen various things back there.
We've had a couple people just briefly possessed. I mean, I don't know if that's never a good thing, but it is scary and unnerving at sometimes when we don't expect that, and then it happens.
Just has a very creepy vibe to it, around the doll room especially. Started off by people donating dolls to us, and then people started sending us haunted dolls. Now, even Nick Ross said that I might have brought more things in here with the dolls, because there are 11 haunted dolls in that room. And that is a possibility. I might have brought more stuff in here than was already in the building before.
Coming up, how about the most viral stories of 2022? That and more after the break.
You're watching the 2022 Year in Review on KRBC, presented by Jackson Brothers Feed and Seed.
Welcome back. It's time to count down the top 5 most viral stories of 2022. Number 5, an employee at the local Long John Silver's threw contents at a customer in the drive-thru, which was caught on video. In this video, customer Brittany Stevens is confronting employee Ethan Donald after Donald allegedly told her to, quote, shut up while she was ordering. Stevens then began recording their conversation. Once she revealed to Donald that she was recording him, he throws what appears to be ice in a cup at Stevens. It was revealed that Ethan has Asperger's syndrome, an incurable developmental disorder affecting social abilities. Number 4, Abilene libraries and the books they contain are once again the subject of public discussion. The Abilene City Council recently approved a resolution to define what qualifies as obscenity as it pertains to having books removed. The resolution was drafted in response to an ordinance proposed by the group Protect Abbey Families called the Safe Library Patron Protection Act. Many spoke in favor and in opposition of the proposal, some calling it extreme and others seeing it as necessary. Number 3. 2022 has been claimed as the deadliest year on Abilene roads. APD has investigated 23 accidents resulting in 28 deaths as of December 10th. 7 of those involved motorcycles and 4 involving pedestrians. Number 2, an Abilene coach shoved an umpire to the ground at a youth baseball game, causing the ump to be hospitalized. The incident occurred at a youth baseball tournament back in April in the Metroplex. The coach, Robbie Johnson, confronted umpire Sam Phelps, shoving him to the ground where he remained immobile for some time. Phelps was hospitalized following the incident and pressed charges. After the break, the number 1 category that went viral in 2022.
You're watching the 2022 Year in Review on KRBC, presented by Jackson Brothers Feed and Seed.
And for our top viral story, an Abilene woman imagining the worst when she had to evacuate due to the mesquite heat fire. Thoughts of family pictures melting off the walls haunted her. Tyler Henderson was with her and walked the property where her nightmares became reality.
I don't know what we're going to do with that.
In a sea of charred trees, it's Stephanie Munshower's baby blue scrubs that stand out. A head and neck cancer nurse meeting us in between cases.
What do you need to survive after this moment? You take what you can, the things that are surely irreplaceable, but in 15 minutes you don't think about the things you wish you had grabbed, you just grab what you can.
Evacuating her grandmother, aunt, and daughter from their 13-acre property in that time span. Grabbing only a change of clothes, a few pictures, and her daughter's ballet dress ahead of her weekend recital.
I think I really never thought it was gone and still didn't believe it until we pulled up and just saw everything was still on fire and burning. And
left with only ash-covered memories of the homes her grandfather built by hand over 40 years ago.
I will never ever be able to experience this home that I was in, my grandmother's home, and so that for me is just very difficult.
A property lined with bright flower beds, teeming with hummingbirds, now looks like a war zone painted by the red tint of the fire retardant dropped.
You know, having things ripped away from you without your choice, and the devastation and the sadness of it all, and the magnitude of looking at your property and seeing everything that you wanted and loved and saw as your future is gone.
However, just as her blue scrubs stand out, so does the only thing left intact. A tattered hammock.
That hammock in particular was a favorite for everybody in my family.
A sign of life for Munshower as grass grows underneath it, with plans to rebuild in the near future.
We spent so much time developing it together, and then also he and my daughters were able to do that, and they rode on the tractor with him together also, and so they were able to experience that too, and to see what he focused on and what he thought was the most important things on this property will be the things that I choose to focus on also.
In Abilene, Tyler Henderson, KRBC, Abilene's local news.
You're watching the 2022 Year in Review on KRBC, presented by Jackson Brothers Feed and Seed.
Before we say goodbye, we reintroduce you to one of Abilene's unsolved mysteries. 20 years ago, the body of former KRBC News reporter Jennifer Servo was found in her Abilene apartment. Since then, only 2 suspects have been named and the case has gone cold. And this BigCountryHomepage.com feature, Downing Bowles and Victor Sotelo detail the day Servo was found and the decision to tell a story that hit too close to home. As we leave you with this final story, we wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
One of our reporters was found dead at her apartment today.
As the afternoon was progressing, I was going, well, I can load the newscast with all kinds of, national, international stories and things such as that to fill the time that we need. It was about that time they walked in and said, we think we're going to not do the newscast at 6 o'clock. And I said, okay, let's talk about this. Okay, so I told them, and I said, my concern here is that if we don't do a newscast, people are turning to us to see what the news is, okay? And if we don't do a newscast, I'm really kind of concerned that people are going to go, what in the world's going on? This is the people I turn to for my news, and they are the news tonight, and there's nothing here that they're mentioning about this. So
I'll go back to that day that we're doing live shots in her in front of her apartment. We came back, we got interviews, we got video, and obviously you have to come back to the station, you have to write a story. I can remember this clearly. You have 3 TVs, and I think it was right in front of Bob's desk back in those days over on 277, and you're watching to see what each station is going to do.
When we started the newscast that night, it really begins to hit you for the first time that you're having to publicly say what has just happened here.
Through tears, especially Sherry said what happened.
And so, as we started to read that, I could hear in her voice, it was starting to shake and quiver. And I knew that she was suffering.
And then they went off the air, put up a candle and a picture of Jennifer for the newscast. And we were, looking back, what else can you do if you're them?
I think the other part of it was, though, that in looking at how we handled that as a television station, I think that we handled it differently than we would any other murder that we might cover in the news. We never stopped our newscast for, and put pictures and slides up of anybody else. Why did we do that with our employee? So I was just kind of concerned about the double standard that we were using, and it's a sad story. It remains unresolved to this day, but it was what it was, and at the time you're just doing the best you can with what you got to work with, and that's kind of what was going on.